When we were making the first one, I thought for sure there would not be a second one, but after it came out and it made so much money, all of us obviously sat back and said, okay, when is the second one coming around?
Originally, we did struggle. We didn't have a story in our heads of exactly what story to tell. And we had a writer's strike pending. You know, the Writers Guild was going on strike. And, you know, so that made it pretty tricky. And the original writers, Bob and Alex, said, look, we'd love to do this. We love this property. We don't really know what the next story should be.
We hesitated on doing the movie for a while because we needed that big idea that made the movie feel really worth doing. And one of the things that we found in looking through the lore and also in asking ourselves what sequels we loved as kids was the fact that there's literally a chapter in the Transformers book that talks about the 20 years of Transformers called The Many Lives and Deaths of Optimus Prime. And it struck us that if we were able to do something as horrific as kill Optimus Prime, pin the responsibility of that on Sam's shoulders, it would really fuel his quest as a hero to make right to the mistake that he had made. And we also knew that if we could make the resurrection of Optimus Prime be an incredible journey that required putting pieces together, if we get the audience to the end of that journey, they would be so satisfied because experiencing both the loss of this character that you love and then bringing him back to life would be so uplifting that it felt like the perfect place to get to in the third act. And that's how we ended up coming to the idea of doing that. But we knew the strike was looming and that there was a finite period of time that we were going to have to develop the story, then we were going to have to stop, and then the minute the strike was over, we were going to have to bang through the script very, very fast. And it felt like a pretty daunting prospect. So we said to the studio that we really needed to bring in someone else to be able to deliver on the timeline that they wanted it done by.
When it was unclear whether they were going to be able to work on the sequel, I got a call from DreamWorks asking if I had any interest in working on the sequel. And I said, well, I did, but I thought Alex and Bob might be writing it. And they said, well, we're not sure if we're going to be writing it. By all means, go ahead and take the meetings on the project. And by the end of it all, Alex and Bob and I had all decided that the way we could make this work was to all write on it together.
Well, at the very beginning, Alex Kurtzman and Bob Orsi and Aaron Kruger sat down with myself and Lorenzo Bonaventura and certainly Michael Bay to try to figure out where we go from here.
We started out at the very beginning with Michael saying that he wanted this movie to be an adventure. He wanted to go places with the story.
I was just instantly drawn to the idea of they've been here a long time. I'm like, let's start looking at some of the big monuments.
So we began with looking at a lot of archaeological sites, and within just a few weeks, Michael sort of settled in on Egypt and on Jordan, and just on the tremendous history of human civilization that part of the world embodies. And he felt like it would be really representative of the immense history to the Transformer civilization that we wanted to explore in the story of this movie.
There is a lot of mythology behind the Transformers toys and the brand. It's not like a lot of other properties that they turn into movies. You know, it wasn't a comic book originally, it was a toy, but subsequently there was a lot of stories that were told about those robots.
One of the things we wanted to do in this film was open the floodgates a little bit and tell the audience that there is an entire universe out there, not only of Transformer characters, but of Transformer history. And there are chapters within books of the story of the Civil War on Cybertron and the story of where Transformers came from and how they were created. And there are all sorts of stories within this universe which we could explore. And the trick is really to make that mythology work while maintaining the human story of the characters we've come to know and love on Earth.
The first movie was so much about this innocent kid wanting to get the girl and wanting the car to get the girl, and then finding himself inadvertently the center of an alien war and rising to that challenge. And it felt to us like all good sequels put their main character in some very, very difficult predicament where they have to choose between being a hero and being normal. And we gravitated toward that basic idea for Sam.
So that was the first thing we focused on, is what kind of rite of passage can we find that, again, has a universality to it, even if you didn't go through the specific one. And the one we chose was that sort of process of becoming a young adult. And that sense, sort of the notion of responsibility.
The next thing that came to mind was leaving home and going to college. And we thought it would be interesting to see him on his own. Who is he outside of these relationships? How does he see himself, and who does he want to be?
In the meantime, the strike was, coming down upon us, and we were sort of left with basically a very rough outline of what those guys had talked about. And it was Michael Bay sitting there in a room by himself saying, well, we can do this. We can, while those guys are out, we're going to figure this out because we've got to prep this movie.
I kept dreaming while they were on strike, and granted we had a, I think, 13-page outline, and that was enough to start prepping.
The first couple of months we spent really focusing on designing about 70 robots.
We have a team of guys, and we sit there, and I start spitting out ideas of different types of robots.
Michael would come in one day and be like, what about this guy? Or we would do this guy, and same time meeting with GM, seeing what new vehicles they had come out, stuff that they were really itching to put into the movie. Certain vehicles, Michael would either say yay, nay, or on it, and we'd go from there.
General Motors cars, they've been very gracious in offering the filmmakers a range of cars and giving Michael some unprecedented access. The kinds of things that we've been able to do with the Camaro in the first movie, I think we're iconic. The kinds of things you're going to see, whether it's the Volt or some of the other new cars, the new Corvette, are just really incredible. The designs are incredible, the cars are incredible, and the characters they become are also incredible because we apply, kind of Hasbro Transformer magic to it, and they become these great characters.
My process usually starts very sketchy. I do a really, really rough silhouette because I think at the end of the day with character design, the key thing is to get a silhouette that sort of has the right personality, because that's sort of the quickest read that you have on an object or on a character is sort of how big are the shoulders, how strong do the arms look, how wide is the chest, does it look like it's athletic, does it look like it's slow, does it look like it's armored, does it look like it's a really quick little scout type creature or character. So you can start to feel that out very quickly with a silhouette. After a loose sketch is done, I would then work that into a more full-blown illustration, which means adding, more realistic lighting in the way that it's painted, taking photography of the car or the pieces of the real thing that it needs to turn into, and applying those from photo scrap over the sort of rough design in Photoshop, and then ultimately applying the level of polish to what is just illustrated that makes it tie in with the photography. So it's sort of a collage process between a rough, intention of the massing of the robot, and then adding in real parts, and then shining it all up to where it looks like a decent, not photorealistic, but a squint photoreal impression of what the robot's really going to look like. And at that point, you present a first version, and then the changes come.
Let me explain something. Yeah. When John Simmons is under he says, I'm under the robot's scrotum. Yeah. I want to do a shot where he looks up when he's trying to know where we are, and I want two, what are those construction wrecking balls kind of hanging a little bit. I'm dead serious. Like a crane thing and then like another wrecking ball, kind of just clink. That's a funny laugh. That is a funny laugh. He looks up and he says, I'm under the, right?
I'm not a car guy. A lot of the nuts and bolts of these things are a mystery to me. But in a way, it was a benefit because applying the logic of someone who knows what every single piece inside of a car does and looks like, and it looks like when you pull the case off and you expose the gears and all that. If I had that kind of a mind when approaching this kind of collage-like sculptural way that we designed the robots, I think it would have actually slowed things down. So in my ignorance, I'll do things like have two sets of something in a robot because you want to use it on both legs, where there's only one of them in a car. But literally, I neither know nor care. so that sort of freed me up to look at the design and sculptural qualities of these car parts and use them as a texture and not worry so much about the literal aspect of it, which of course creates trouble for the people who have to make the toys and for the people who have to figure out the transformations in the movie. But we kind of knew that going in, that we wouldn't have the time to make robots that would look really, really cool and also be engineered properly. You know, that to do that, all of that elegantly and perfectly is a whole different kind of design process. That's like NASA type design where you need a huge team of people and it takes longer. So our goal was to come up with stuff that looked cool enough to satisfy the director, because, you know, at the end of the day, he wants the stuff to look cool. And then it was, to be honest, somebody else's problem to figure out how to transform it.